I was folding the laundry, carefully smoothing out each wrinkle as I went. Sarah. I heard my husband's voice, Daniel, call out my name, and I turned around in surprise. He looked nervous, holding a small box in his hand. Thank you for everything. I got this to celebrate our 30th wedding anniversary. The small box was wrapped in pale pink wrapping paper with a neat red ribbon tied on top. As I took the tiny box, which fit perfectly in the palm of my hand, my heart filled with joy, and I couldn't help but smile. Thank you, I'm so happy. I carefully untied the ribbon with anticipation, but the moment I opened the box, I froze. I couldn't believe what I saw inside. Without thinking, I dashed out of the house. Sarah, where are you going? I ignored Daniel's calls and just kept running. I couldn't comprehend his actions, and my mind was in turmoil. The joy I felt moments ago had vanished, and now I wished I could take back the past 30 years. I ran until I found a small park, where I sat on a bench to catch my breath. A gentle breeze brushed past me, swirling the fallen leaves around the park. After a while, I began to calm down and stared at the box I was still holding. And then, this thing. I raised my arm high, ready to throw it into the trash can. That disgusting thing, a lump of pure revulsion, was about to be hurled away. My name is Sarah, and I'm 55 years old. I live with my husband, Daniel, and our son, Kent, just the three of us. Kent is a college student, and he's currently in the middle of job hunting. This morning, like always, he hurriedly grabbed a piece of bread from the table and rushed out of the house. I'm going to be late for my interview. It's the same routine, and it seems he still hasn't gotten used to waking up early. Watching him from the living room, Daniel muttered, I'm worried if he'll be able to manage as a working adult. Well, if you can do it, then Kent will be fine. Daniel works at an advertising agency and is currently in a managerial position. Daniel used to do the same thing every morning when we first got married. Really, no need to play dumb. I laughed as I reminded him that it was time for him to leave as well. It wouldn't look good if the department head showed up late. Daniel quickly stuffed his smartphone into his chest pocket and hurried out the door. As I listened to the soft sound of the front door closing, I began to wash the dishes. Lately, Daniel has been acting strange. He doesn't seem to be aware of it, but I've noticed him using his smartphone more frequently, not only in the mornings and evenings, but he's even started taking it into the bathroom and dressing room. If it's for work or to check the news, I can understand, but there have been times when Daniel has tried to hide his screen from me. Don't just peek at my phone, he said with a glare, sounding irritated. I couldn't understand why he was so bothered by it. After finishing the dishes, I began getting ready to go out. I've been working as an office staff member at a hospital since Kent was in high school. The hospital is only about a 5-minute bike ride from home, so it's conveniently located. My main role is at the reception desk. And while things were chaotic during the outbreak of infectious diseases, they've since settled down. Of the administrative staff who made it through that difficult time, only Mary, one of my colleagues, is still here. Mary and I have been close friends since our school days. It was a coincidence that we ended up working at the same place, but having her around has been such a comfort. I think I'll vent to Mary a little today, I muttered to myself as I stuffed my lunch into my bag in the empty living room. During lunch break that day, I sat with Mary in the break room, eating and telling her about Daniel's recent behavior. Since we're the same age, it's easy to talk to her, and she listened intently, nodding in agreement. That's totally suspicious. Right. He's been like this for months now. Mary took another bite of her sandwich and continued. Anything else? Like, is he working overtime more? Or are you two talking less? As I continued eating my lunch, I thought for a moment. Now that you mention it, I tried to recall recent events. I've never considered myself much of a chatterbox at home, but I still share a thing or two about my day, like how oranges were on sale at the supermarket, or how our neighbor gave us some vegetables. It's really just small things. But Daniel used to listen carefully and react with either joy or sadness. Recently, though, he only gives vague responses. Not only that, but after dinner, he's been locking himself in his room for hours and not coming out. Then, at some point, he started coming home late or sending messages saying he didn't need dinner. No way. Wasn't he really into your cooking? I can't believe it. Exactly. When he proposed, he even said, "I want you to cook me delicious meals every day." Daniel always said my cooking was the best in the world. I've always enjoyed cooking, but before we got married, I really practiced hard. But just last month, something happened. Daniel came home looking exhausted, probably from working overtime. "Welcome back. You're late tonight," I greeted him, and all he said was, "Yeah, just a bit," with a very dark expression on his face. That night, I had prepared fried chicken, salad, and a few sides for dinner, since it was already late. Kent and I had started eating without him. "Dad, you should eat soon. The fried chicken's great," Kent said with his mouth full, but Daniel just glanced at the table. "I just made it, so it's delicious," I added, encouraging him to eat. He sighed briefly and sat down. It felt like ages since the three of us had sat together at the table. Daniel took a bite of the fried chicken, but after just one taste, he suddenly snapped. "This is awful. I'm done." "What? Why? Where are you going?" Leaving his half-eaten plate on the table, Daniel stormed into his room and slammed the door behind him. Ever since that incident, Daniel has rarely eaten dinner at home. After I finished telling Mary the whole story, she let out a thoughtful hum while sipping her vegetable juice. "That's definitely strange." Talking to Mary about everything made me feel a little lighter. If I had kept holding it all in by myself, I'm sure I would have exploded at some point. "If anything else happens, let me know. I'm always here for you." I felt nothing but gratitude for Mary, who offered her support. "Thank you. If there's ever anything I can do for you, too, just let me know." A few weeks had passed since that conversation with Mary. Daniel's cold attitude remained unchanged. As I glanced at the calendar, I noticed that our wedding anniversary was just 2 days away. Every year, I get excited and prepare a special homemade meal for this day. But this time, I was a little scared. What if he won't eat it again? What if he immediately rejected it, saying it was bad? Or worse, what if he told me he was eating out before coming home? These thoughts swirled in my mind as the day approached. It just so happened that both Daniel and I were off work, and Kent was at the university. Despite it being just the two of us, Daniel was, as usual, glued to his smartphone. He occasionally stared at the screen as if thinking about something, and then quickly tapped away at it. As I watched Daniel, I went about folding the laundry. There was a lot of laundry today. I picked up each piece of clothing, smoothing out the wrinkles as I folded them. Strangely enough, this task, which I've done for decades, has remained the same. As I was lost in those thoughts, Daniel suddenly approached me. "Sarah." I turned around when he called my name. Nervously, Daniel extended a small box towards me. "Thank you for everything. This is for our 30th wedding anniversary." The small box was wrapped in light pink wrapping paper, tied with a red ribbon on top. As I took the box, which was small enough to fit in the palm of my hand, my heart was immediately filled with joy. I couldn't help but smile. For me. You remembered? Yeah. I've been cold to you lately because of work stress, but I'm not dumb enough to forget our anniversary, Daniel said with a shy grin. Thank you. I'm so happy. Go ahead, open it. I think you'll like it. I wondered what was inside. Excitedly, I began untying the ribbon, carefully removing the wrapping. It revealed a white box, and opened the lid. In an instant, my mind went blank. The contents of the box were unbelievable. Without thinking, I bolted out of the house. Sarah, where are you going? Ignoring Daniel's calls to stop, I just kept running. Why? How could this happen? These farts kept swirling in my mind as I sprinted through the residential streets. Inside the box was a monogrammed mug and a new cookie from a famous bakery, but the mug had an R engraved on it. That wasn't my initial. And the new cookie? It was a chocolate cookie, drenched in chocolate. The truth is, I'm allergic to cacao, and I can't eat chocolate. I had told Daniel about this a long time ago. He knew about my allergy, of course. So why would he give me a cookie drenched in chocolate? I couldn't make sense of it. He remembered our anniversary, but forgot about my allergy. How does that even happen? The joy I'd felt just moments before was completely wiped away, replaced by sadness and confusion that made my head spin. This wasn't the only thing. His attitude and words over the past few months all came flooding back to me. Unable to stand it anymore, I had bolted out of the house. Daniel hadn't even tried to chase after me. I was starting to feel like I couldn't trust him anymore. I looked up and noticed a small park nearby. I sat down on a bench to catch my breath. My heart was pounding, like it was hammering inside my chest. I tried to calm down by taking deep breaths. A gentle breeze passed by, swirling the fallen leaves in the park. Once I felt a bit calmer, I stared at the box in my hand. Could this be some kind of mistake? I thought about opening it again, but stopped myself. This thing. I raised my hand, ready to throw it away, but I couldn't. Daniel's face flashed in my mind. Slowly, I lowered my hand and just stared at the small white box. That's when I remembered the smartphone in my skirt pocket. With my free hand, I pulled it out and unlocked the screen. The first person that came to mind was Mary. Desperate for someone to listen, I called her, and thankfully, she answered. Hello, Sarah. What's wrong? Mary, hi. I need to talk to you. My voice trembled as I recounted everything that had just happened. I was so flustered that even I didn't fully understand what I was saying. Even so, Mary listened to me patiently, just like the time she listened at the break room at work. I see. That's unforgivable. How could he do something like that to my dear Sarah? Mary was furious on the other end of the line, as if the situation had happened to her. Don't worry, I'm here for you. And honestly, after everything that's happened, you don't need to keep quiet anymore. What? Before I could ask what she meant, Mary continued. You should hire a detective to investigate his affair. A detective? But is that really necessary? You're too naive. Mistaking his wife's initials and giving her chocolate when he knows she's allergic. From where I stand, that's totally suspicious. Mary, now even more worked up than I was, went on. I have a friend from college named Walter. He's a private detective now, specializing in infidelity investigations. I never imagined I'd know someone who was close to a detective specializing in affairs. It sounded like something out of a TV drama or a movie. So what happens if I hire him? I asked cautiously. Mary responded without hesitation. You'll find out if your husband is cheating, and, if so, who the other person is. The other person. Hearing those words made my heart race. Is there really someone else? It felt like a far-fetched idea, like trying to grasp at clouds. Sarah, it's entirely up to you whether you want to investigate, but I wouldn't recommend letting this uncertainty linger, she said as a friend. After our call, Mary gave me Walter's contact information and the name of his office. I debated with myself for a while before deciding to reach out. I had to know the truth about what Daniel was hiding. By the time I calmed down and returned home in the afternoon, Daniel gave me a puzzled look. "Welcome back. Where'd you go?" "Nowhere special," I answered casually, trying to act as normal as possible so he wouldn't suspect anything about the detective. "I needed to finish the laundry." Daniel continued watching me curiously, but didn't seem too concerned. There were no words of worry, like, "Are you okay? Or is something wrong? You looked like you had a bomb right in front of you." That was the only remark he made, without much thought. Maintaining a calm exterior while secretly investigating whether Daniel was being unfaithful wasn't going to be easy. A few days later, I received a call from Walter, and we arranged to meet at a cafe to go over the results. When Walter spotted me, he gave a slight nod, since I was feeling a bit overwhelmed. I had asked Mary to come along for support. "Good day. I'm Walter. Let's get straight to the point. I've compiled the findings regarding your husband." In a booth at the corner of the cafe, Walter briefly introduced himself and then began spreading out several documents. "To put it simply, your husband is having an affair." He folded his slender fingers in front of his chest and spoke gravely. I couldn't find the words to respond, so I just stared at him, frozen in place. "We've also identified the other person. This woman in the photos is Rebecca, your husband's subordinate at work." Walter held a stack of photos and started laying them out one by one. There were pictures of Rebecca meeting Daniel in a car, entering restaurants together, and finally, the most damning, a photo of them leaving a hotel, with Daniel's face clearly visible. As I looked at the stack of evidence, I felt a crushing pain in my chest, as though my heart was shattering into pieces. My breathing became shallow, and the background noise of the cafe faded away. Next to me, Mary was nodding intently and saying something, but I couldn't hear a word. Then, Mary reached for one of the photos. It showed Daniel and Rebecca, arm in arm, walking into a bakery. "This is the same bakery that sold the cookies Daniel gave me." There were several pictures of them together at the bakery, suggesting this wasn't a one-time visit. They had likely been there many times. Sarah, are you okay? You look pale." Mary leaned in close, her face full of concern. I must have been wearing an expression of utter shock. Even Walter appeared startled and a little flustered. "Are you all right? You've gone completely white." The weight of reality had drained the blood from my face without me even realizing it. I'm okay, but I do have a question," I said, struggling to maintain my composure. "This photo of them entering the bakery, are they going there often?" Walter nodded. "Yes, it seems Rebecca is quite fond of the bakery's sweets. Daniel had been going out of his way to take Rebecca to that bakery." The shock hit me like a wave, leaving me speechless. As I stared at the picture, I suddenly recalled the mug. The R engraved on the mug was Rebecca's initial. That pale pink box wasn't meant to be my anniversary gift. It was something Daniel had prepared for Rebecca. That must have been it. As I murmured in disbelief, both Mary and Walter exchanged puzzled looks. After we talked for a little while longer, we left the cafe. Walter gave a slight bow, just as he had when we met, and walked off in the opposite direction from where Mary and I were headed. As I walked alongside Mary, my mind drifted back over the past 30 years. Meeting Daniel, starting our relationship, his proposal, the birth of our child. Every moment had been filled with happiness. Now it all felt like meaningless trash, and a deep emptiness settled in my heart. I wanted those 30 years back. As I thought about how everything I'd shared with him felt like it had been for nothing, I began to feel overwhelmed with sadness. Tears were on the verge of spilling over when a voice suddenly called out to me. I looked up and saw Kent standing there. I just finished my lecture and was about to head home. Is something wrong? As people bustled around us, going about their day, I stood frozen, staring at him. Should I tell him the truth about what was inside my bag? While I hesitated, Mary spoke up. Since we're all here, why don't the three of us grab dinner? It was the first time Mary meeting Kent, but he seemed to sense the tension in the air and agreed to join us at a nearby restaurant. I hesitated before finally pulling the documents out of my bag. Kent, please stay calm while I explain. I then laid everything out for him, just as I had heard it from Walter earlier. He was clearly shocked, but there was also a certain look of understanding on his face. Well, now that you mention it, Dad has been acting kind of strange lately. You noticed? I asked, and he nodded slightly. Yeah, so, what are you going to do now, Mom? I mean, are you? His voice trailed off, his gaze dropping to the floor. I knew what was on his mind. He was thinking about divorce. But even I hadn't decided whether that was the path I should take. Seeing my hesitation, Kent spoke again. No matter what happens, I'm here to support you, Mom, as your son. His expression was a mix of concern and determination, and his words were steady. I'm on your side too, Sarah. Whatever decision you make, that won't change. Mary chimed in, striking a mock-fighting pose with her fists. Whatever decision I make. Hearing their words, I realized something. No matter what I decided, it was my choice to make. I had to face this myself and bring closure to it with my own hands. The day after our dinner, I went to work as usual, standing at my station at the reception desk. Maybe it was a change in seasons, but there seemed to be an increase in people feeling unwell. It was just after the morning consultations and billing. The number of patients had slowed down. The front doors opened, and a woman stepped inside. From a distance, she looked vaguely familiar. I briefly looked away to prepare a registration form for her. She stood in front of me at the counter and spoke to me. Yes, when I looked up, she quietly showed me a single mug. In that instant, my breath caught in my throat. The mug had an S engraved on it. Suddenly, I realized why she looked so familiar. This was Rebecca. How did she know where I worked? A chill ran down my spine, but I kept my composure, making sure she wouldn't suspect that I already knew who she was from the investigation. Is this your first time visiting our clinic? If so, you'll need to fill out a form. However, she interrupted. I apologize for being forward. Her voice low, almost hesitant. Are you Daniel's wife? They say eyes speak louder than words. And in that moment, her expression was something I would never forget. There was a flicker of guilt, an unease that revealed her inner turmoil. Yes, I am, I replied, hesitantly, unsure where this was going. Suddenly, Rebecca bowed deeply and began apologizing profusely. I'm so sorry. What? I was shocked, my eyes widening as I tried to comprehend what was happening. The mug with the S on it seemed to droop in her hands, as if weighed down by the same guilt she carried. I thought, she started to say, but before she could finish, some of the other staff, having noticed the commotion, came out to see what was going on. I couldn't let them overhear anything related to my private life, so I quickly stood and guided Rebecca to calm down, and promising to meet her later after work, Throughout the afternoon, I couldn't shake the image of her standing there, holding that mug with the S. What was she trying to say? Why had she suddenly come to apologize? What had she meant by "I fought"? I kept glancing at the clock, and finally, as soon as my shift ended, I hurried outside. There was a bus stop just in front of the hospital, connecting the station to our clinic. At the bus stop, Rebecca was sitting upright on the bench, waiting quietly. "I'm sorry to keep you waiting. I'm Sarah, Daniel's wife," I said as I approached her. She flinched at my words. "Oh, I apologize for earlier. My name is Rebecca," she responded, her tone overly polite, catching me off guard. Knowing that Daniel is having an affair with this woman, somehow I felt defeated. "Rebecca, why did you say those things earlier?" "Well, actually, I've been in a relationship with Daniel." She hesitated, averting her eyes as she spoke. "A few days ago, he gave me a gift. I was so happy, until I opened it and saw this." She pulled the same mug with the S initial from her handbag, the one she had shown earlier. "Daniel told me he was divorced." I truly believed it. Divorced? Yes. He said he had already finalized everything, so I assumed he was single. "Since when did Daniel claim we were divorced?" I was stunned. Rebecca explained that they had been seeing each other for a few months, during which time Daniel had led her to believe the divorce was already behind him. As her superior at work, he seemed trustworthy, and she had no reason to doubt him. There was no wedding ring, no signs of a wife or child in his life. But when she received the mug with the S on it, something didn't sit right with her. I started to wonder if he hadn't actually divorced yet. "But how did you know I worked here?" Once, Daniel mentioned that his ex-wife used to work at this clinic, and I remembered. Ex-wife. To Daniel, I was already a part of his past. Her revelation left me speechless. By the way, my favorite treat from that bakery is the chocolate cookies. But he gave me vanilla instead, and that also felt odd. That's strange. The box I received had chocolate cookies in it. "So you think the mug and the cookies?" He mixed them up. There was no other explanation. It was becoming clearer by the second. Rebecca, completely unaware of my cacao allergy, had received the wrong gift from Daniel. She looked visibly shaken and repeatedly apologized, insisting that she hadn't known about me at all. From her demeanor, it was hard to believe she was lying. She really must not have noticed my existence. I trusted Daniel, but being betrayed in this way has left me deeply shocked as well. We are both victims of the same man. "Rebecca, I have a suggestion for you," I said, suddenly struck by an idea. A few days after my conversation with Rebecca, I found myself standing in the kitchen, waiting for Daniel to come home. I had already made up my mind. The clock was ticking, and the moment of confrontation was drawing near. Eventually, the front door opened. "I'm home," he muttered, just as he always did, without even attempting to hide his exhaustion, as he entered the living room. I spoke to him immediately. "Welcome home. We need to talk." "What? Fine, but make it quick." He carelessly tossed his business bag aside and stood there, ready to listen. I pulled out the small box that he had given me on our 30th wedding anniversary, opening the lid as I revealed the mug with the letter R on it, along with the chocolate cookies. Daniel's eyes darted nervously for a split second. "Thank you again for the thoughtful gift, but can you tell me about this mug?" I pointed to it, pressing him for an explanation. For a moment, he hesitated, then plastered on a weak grin, trying to cover up his discomfort. "Oh, it's just a souvenir, that's all." "A souvenir? For what?" "Come on, it's for our anniversary, obviously. But the initial is wrong, don't you think?" "It's neither mine or yours." I said it with a calm expression, without breaking eye contact. Daniel laughed dismissively, as if he thought I was being ridiculous. It's not an initial. R is just the name of a brand. The excuse was so flimsy, it was almost insulting. I could have pushed further and asked which brand it was, but I knew it would take all night to unravel his lies. When I said nothing, he seemed to take my silence as acceptance. Can I go now? I'm tired and just want to rest. The smug look of triumph on his face was infuriating, but I wasn't done yet. Not so fast. I invited a guest tonight, I called out, and the woman stepped into the living room. How? Seeing the woman, Daniel let out a surprised voice and went pale, as if looking at a ghost. He stared wide-eyed at Rebecca, who stood there. Rebecca, with her brow furrowed, looked at Daniel, and in her hand, she was holding the mug with the S initial. Oh, do you know her? I don't recall introducing you to her. No, Daniel, you know that's not true. We've been in love for quite some time now, haven't we? Daniel opened and closed his mouth, utterly at a loss for words. As he stood there trembling, I decided to reveal something more. From a slightly oversized envelope, I pulled out the documents compiling evidence of his affair, scattering several photographs across the table. Pictures of Daniel and Rebecca entering a bakery together, leaving a hotel, dining at a chic restaurant. What he must have thought of each image, I couldn't tell. He simply stared at them in stunned silence. When the last photo fell onto the table, Daniel, now pale, muttered, "What is all this?" Daniel, what exactly is your relationship with Rebecca? She's just a colleague. There's no love between us. That's a lie. I glanced at Rebecca, whose face was visibly clouded with irritation. These photos, they mean nothing. It's just work. And those dinners were business meetings. He stammered, clearly grasping at straws. They say people cover their mouths when they lie. And there was Daniel, doing exactly that. Really? Just dinner. I picked up one of the photos and studied it. Two people laughing together in a restaurant, looking anything but professional. It looks like you're having a great time at work, I said, maintaining a calm, even tone as I pressed Daniel further. He stared back at me, sweat beading on his forehead. What's going on, Daniel? Rebecca walked quietly closer to him, her voice steady but filled with disappointment. I trusted you. But what is all this? Rebecca? No, it's not what you think. She's not my ex-wife. She's a distant relative. A distant relative. Is this distant relative the one whose house you've been coming back to? Whose home is this, Daniel? Anger was beginning to flare up in Rebecca's eyes, as if horns were about to sprout from her head. Meanwhile, Daniel was reduced to muttering incoherently. He was surely scrambling in his mind, trying to figure out what to say to appease both Rebecca and me. But his attempts were futile, and he failed to answer Rebecca's barrage of questions. You told me you were divorced, didn't you? Explain that. Divorce? Well, he shrugged evasively while looking at me. Did I say that? Or didn't I? He avoided eye contact with Rebecca and turned his face away from me as well. He was simply running away from both me and Rebecca, fed up with his completely insincere attitude. My anger reached its peak. Growing impatient, I finally spoke in a firm tone for the first time. If you wanted a divorce, you should have just said so. I spat the words like a bolt of lightning. I didn't want to say such things, but I couldn't bear to wait for him to speak any longer. Then Daniel responded, his tone clear for the first time. Sarah, I don't want a divorce. Listen to me, he said, starting what seemed like a speech. People are like the pastries at a bakery. There are the regular items, But then there are also seasonal specials and limited edition treats. Rebecca and I were both silently trying to understand, listening intently. The regular items, like the pastries that have always been around, they have their own appeal. That's why they're called long sellers, he said, trying to emphasize the point. I had no idea what he was getting at, but I motioned for him to continue. Then, but sometimes you just want to try something different, right? He had a confident look on his face as he listed the names of cakes and cookies. He must have learned those at that bakery, but all I could think was, where was this conversation even going? Rebecca must have felt the same because she glanced at me. Poor thing, she seemed confused, with question marks all over her face. Hey, enough with the pastry names. Can you just get to the point? I sighed and said to him. Daniel then turned to face me. What I'm saying is, while I love you, sometimes I want to hang out with other people, too. For a change of pace. Both Rebecca and I were left speechless. What on earth was he saying? This man, how could he casually say something so absurd without any shame? I could only throw a disgusted glance his way. Rebecca, too, was staring at him with cold, contemptuous eyes. And yet, Daniel, lost in his own self-congratulatory speech, wore an almost euphoric expression on his face. He hadn't even noticed our stares. Seeing his pitiful state, I realized there was nothing left in him to feel sympathy for. Coldly, I said, I'm getting a divorce. What, divorce? Come on, you're joking. You think I'm joking? You must be out of your mind. Finally noticing the coldness in my gaze, Daniel began to panic. You're really serious? I'm dead serious. I've been trusting you for 30 years, and I was wrong all along. No, Sarah, please, wait. I'm begging you, reconsider. Only now, after realizing how serious I was, did he drop to his knees and start begging. I get it. It was wrong of me to get involved with another woman. Okay, isn't that it? I said nothing. I just stared at him icily. Daniel began pleading. Please, just think it over. I'll never do it again. I promise. So please, the divorce. He clung to my feet, apologizing, but I had no intention of humoring him. I was wrong. I'll spend the rest of my life making it up to you, I swear. As he said this, he sniffled. It seemed like he was crying. If he was going to cry and apologize, he shouldn't have done it in the first place. But it was too late now. Besides, Daniel was misunderstanding one thing. That's not it. You really don't get it, I said quietly, crossing my arms. Do you remember that I have a cacao allergy? Daniel looked up at me, suddenly realizing something. I was wondering when you'd finally notice, but you never did. I've been telling you this for ages. Cacao allergy. Isn't that just a matter of personal taste? Something inside me snapped completely. Don't mess with me. You said at the time, with a straight face. You look like there's a bomb in there. Right? You were exactly right. I picked up the chocolate cookie and the mug that had been sitting on the table. I couldn't hold back my emotions anymore. I was so furious, I didn't know what to do. Getting a cookie with cacao in it is like being handed a time bomb. I raised my arm and hurled the cookie at Daniel. I was about to throw the mug, too, when Rebecca stopped me. Daniel stood there, staring at the cookie in shock, his mouth agape. No way. I'm really being thrown away. Rebecca, you're not like that, right? With tear-stained eyes, Daniel looked at Rebecca, pleading. But to his surprise, Rebecca snapped back at him. Don't insult me. I'm so disappointed in you, Daniel. Stay away from me. Daniel looked as if he'd been struck with a blunt object. Then he noticed Kent standing at the living room entrance. Kent had been hiding in the doorway, witnessing everything. "You're the worst. A traitor." Even his own son coldly spat those words at him, leaving Daniel to hang his head in deep shame. After that, there were no further discussions, and we divorced. Daniel wore a dark, miserable expression, as if it were the end of the world, while signing the divorce papers. I guess, in his own way, he understood the gravity of what he had done. We had to give up the house, and now it's listed with a real estate agent. Thankfully, several people have expressed interest in viewing it, and one couple is even considering purchasing it. Daniel packed his things and left quickly. He said he couldn't bear to face Kent or me. A pitiful man, always running away. "Do as you please," I said, sending him off. I doubt I'll ever see him again. Since divorcing Daniel, Rebecca and I still occasionally have meals together. On a sunny afternoon, we were having a slightly late lunch, talking about our recent lives, and eventually discussing Daniel's whereabouts, when rumors of Daniel's affair with Rebecca spread. Other employees started whispering things behind his back. Rebecca found out, after asking for more details, that he had actually been involved in another affair, even before her. At that time, everyone was in disbelief. They couldn't believe it, but it was true. Rebecca nodded awkwardly at my question. It turned out Daniel had been bouncing from one affair to another, going back and forth between his workplace and home. Thinking about it sent chills down my spine, making me feel utterly disgusted. What kind of person behaves like that? After that, he was demoted. He's way down the ladder now. While it's all his own doing, I do hope he takes this time to seriously reflect on his actions. Rebecca, after that, quit the job where Daniel worked and started job hunting. She said she felt sick just being in the same space as him. As it happened, there was an opening for an administrative position at my workplace. One of the clerical staff had moved on to a different job, and we had just started recruiting for a replacement. "How about working in admin at my place? You can leave on time, and it's easy to take paid leave, too." At first, Rebecca hesitated, saying she had no experience in medical administration, but after suggesting it a few more times, she finally warmed to the idea and started working at the same place as me. Once she gave it a try, she realized it suited her better than expected. Now we stand side by side as colleagues at the front desk. Speaking of jobs, Kent's job search has been going well, and he's received 3 offers. He's still deciding which company to join, as he's not quite ready to make a final choice yet. Either way, he'll officially be entering the workforce next week. As a parent, there's nothing more gratifying than seeing Kent grow to this point. When I mentioned this to Mary in the office break room, she smiled. "You're probably feeling a little lonely, though, aren't you?" Rebecca also chuckled. "You've been so worried about his job search all this time." "Of course I was worried, that's normal," I replied, a little embarrassed, while eating my lunch. That being said, now that I'm back home alone, I find myself with an unusual amount of free time. Being single again, I've been thinking about starting something new. "Sarah, you're great at cooking. Why not start a class?" A cooking class. The suggestion caught me off guard. It was something I had thought about in the past, but back then, Kent was still young, and I couldn't imagine opening a class. But now, maybe I could give it a shot. "Yay, maybe I'll try it," I said, smiling as I began pursuing my own happiness, taking a step toward a dream I once had. Run away now. During a trip with my husband Harrison, I was whispered to by a stranger at a rest stop. "What do you mean?" I couldn't help but ask back. After hearing her whisper, I was shocked when I looked through Harrison's luggage. What was he planning to do with this? I hurried into the driver's seat. It seemed like Harrison was coming back at that moment. Terrified of Harrison, who appeared in the corner of my eye, I left him behind and drove away from the rest area. My name is Zara Garcia. I'm 33 years old. I run a company. I've loved clothes since I was young, and after graduating, I went to a vocational school for fashion. I studied design and started my own brand. Because I was always working, I never really had a boyfriend. There were people who showed interest, but I could never quite like them back. As a business owner, I met many people, but most men were only interested in my money or wanted to show me off as a trophy. It felt like no one saw me for who I am. But at 33, my friends were getting married or having children and starting new lives. I wasn't particularly keen on marriage. But being an only child, my parents began to pressure me into feeling like I should marry. Amidst this, I met a man. His name is Harrison Moore. He's 33, the same age as me. He works at the office, and he's the brother of Vincent Moore, the executive vice president of my company. Vincent has been supporting me since I started my company, and he's one of the people I trust the most. Vincent introduced me to Harrison when their father passed away. I didn't know the details, but it seems their father died suddenly. Their mother had divorced and been separated since they were children, leaving Vincent and Harrison to grow up as just the two of them. Despite their hardships, they both behaved stoically, greeting the mourners properly. Moreover, Harrison was very considerate towards me the first time we met. Acting on Vincent's behalf, he stayed by my side, making sure I didn't feel down by sharing happy memories of their father. I was moved by his thoughtfulness, and, knowing he was Vincent's brother, I quickly opened up to him, confident he was a good person. Later, Vincent formally introduced us, and Harrison and I began dating. I was thrilled to have my first boyfriend. But it didn't take long to notice Harrison's selfishness. Work again. You're the boss, just take a break. Let Vincent handle it. It doesn't work that way. Vincent has his duties, and being the boss isn't as easy as you think. Contrary to what some might think, being an entrepreneur doesn't mean I can take days off at will. In fact, it's quite the opposite, making it hard to take a break. Like other regular businessmen, Harrison was promised to have his weekends off, whereas for me, it was normal to work on weekends. I would often work at home as well. Even so, I made sure to prepare meals and didn't neglect household chores on days Harrison visited. I took his words as his way of wanting to spend more time with me and overlooked his occasional whims and temper. I wanted to cherish my first boyfriend. Although Harrison behaved this way, I believed he cared for me. Even if he wasn't the boyfriend I had imagined, I liked preparing meals for him and looked forward to his visits. After a year of dating, we decided to get married. Vincent was delighted, and I felt a strange connection to becoming his actual sister-in-law. The wedding went smoothly. Being an only child, and Harrison being the younger son, Harrison decided to take our family name. It wasn't my or my parents' wish. Harrison himself strongly wished to join my family. Since it was just Zara in our family, I was ready for her to leave once she got married. "You don't have to worry about us," my mother told Harrison, but for some reason, he insisted on taking on our family name. My father also said, "I'm sure he has his own thoughts being the younger sibling. If that's what Harrison wants, it's all right for him to change his last name to ours." Ultimately, Harrison changed his last name from Harrison Moore to Harrison Garcia. For me, changing my surname after getting married would have been a hassle, so in a way, it was a relief. My relatives praised Harrison for becoming a son-in-law for my sake, and I found myself further idealizing him. Sometime after we got married, I brought up the idea of going on a trip. Work had finally settled down, and we had the time, so I wanted to travel with Harrison. It was, in a way, our honeymoon. We brought home brochures from a travel agency and discussed where to go. However, Harrison coldly said to me, "Huh? Abroad? That's a waste of money. Just because you're the boss doesn't mean you should waste money. A once-in-a-lifetime honeymoon trip is a waste of money?" I had to bite my tongue to keep from saying that. But it's our honeymoon, and we've never gone on a trip together, have we? I want to go somewhere, even if it's just within the country. Harrison sighed at my words. Then, reluctantly, "If it's within the country, then okay." "Oh, that's right. There's a nice hotel," he said. I really wanted to go abroad, but if Harrison didn't want to, then I couldn't insist. I changed our destination to that hotel. Harrison told me about his recommended hotel, choosing a good room and plan without being too extravagant. And on the day, "Don't worry about anything over here." Vincent sent me that message as we headed out on our trip. Gratefully accepting his words, I went to the hotel in Harrison's car. During the ride, Harrison seemed in good spirits, and I enjoyed myself too. Let's stop by the travel center. They have famous bread here. We won't be able to eat dinner if we do." Laughing, Harrison agreed to stop at the travel center. We enjoyed the gourmet food there, took photos, and had a good time. After spending some time there, when Harrison suggested we should head out, I nodded. "I'm going to have a smoke first. You can go back to the car." Harrison was a smoker. Since I don't smoke, he gave me the keys when I said I'd go back to the car first. "All right. I'll buy some coffee and head back." I took the keys and went to the coffee corner of the store. But there, for a moment, I felt a chill down my spine. Looking around, nothing seemed amiss. Thinking it was just my imagination, I reached for the coffee. No one was at the register, but upon seeing me, a store clerk hurriedly opened the register. "It's $2. Can I pay with a card?" After a transactional conversation and paying, I was about to grab the coffee when she gripped it tightly, refusing to let go. "What's going on?" Barely managing to speak, she whispered to me, "Run away now." "What? If you don't, you'll become their prey." Shocked, I was frozen. As her grip on the coffee loosened, our eyes met. Maybe the chill I felt earlier was her gaze. Her intense stare made me lose any desire to resist, and I whispered, "What do you mean? You're with Harrison Moore, right?" "He's Harrison Garcia now," but knowing Harrison's maiden name meant she had seen us together and approached me. Confused, I nodded. "Go to the police now. If you don't believe me, look through his luggage. There must be something." The store clerk then let go of my coffee. Harrison shouldn't have been back yet. Gripping the keys tightly, I rushed back to the car. Though I didn't understand her reason, there must have been one. Not thinking it was a prank, I immediately checked Harrison's luggage upon returning to the car. "What is this?" And looking inside, I was terrified. Harrison's luggage contained a bottle with sleeping pills, a shovel, a large knife, and work clothes. What was he planning to do? Just imagining it scared me. I quickly closed the trunk and got into the driver's seat. I could see Harrison emerging from the smoking area. Then, as if fleeing, I quickly stepped on the accelerator. Harrison, seeing the car move, looked surprised. But I was terrified of Harrison, who appeared in the corner of my eye and left the travel center without looking back. From there, I acted without thinking. I got off the highway, searched for a police station, and took refuge there. "Please help me." Shaking, I ran into the police, and they took me in, wondering what had happened. I explained the situation. "I found a knife and a shovel in the luggage. I'm sure my husband intends to dismember me. There's no way that's true." However, I froze at Harrison's voice, who had followed me in. "Harrison, what are you talking about?" And leaving me at the travel center. It was tough catching a taxi to get here. In front of the police, Harrison scolded me. "Are you her husband? For caution's sake, may we see your luggage?" The police asked Harrison. Yes," Harrison said, and we moved to the parking lot. When the trunk was opened, it revealed exactly what I had seen. The two police officers, too, seemed to doubt that these were items for a trip. But it was Harrison who explained to them, "I'm sorry for the disturbance. The sleeping pills are mine. I can't sleep with a different pillow. And as for the shovel and knife, there's a place near the hotel where you can mine for gold and gems, so I intended to use them for that." Surprised by his explanation, Harrison continued, "My wife is a busy person, so I thought I'd go alone while she rests. I didn't explain this to her, and it seems we've had a huge misunderstanding." With a smile. His explanation sounded too much like an excuse, and my fear only grew. "Come on, let's go." "No, I won't go. What's gotten into you all of a sudden?" "Cut it out," Harrison said, sounding exasperated. To the police, I must have seemed like a mad woman. Reluctantly, I left the police station with Harrison. "What's gotten into you, seriously?" Even after leaving the police, Harrison seemed concerned. But even that could have been an act to gain my trust. That night, we arrived at the hotel. What should have been an exciting time felt heavy. "Come on, take a shower and freshen up." As soon as we arrived, Harrison urged me to take a shower. Feeling uneasy, I headed to the bathroom. But on the way, I realized I had forgotten my face wash in my bag and returned to the room. There should have been only Harrison in the room, but I heard voices inside. I quietly listened in. "That was close, man. Never thought the luggage would be checked. But our plan hasn't failed, has it?" I froze on the spot as the implication of his words became clear. The store clerk at the travel center had said they. There must be an accomplice. He must be talking to that accomplice on the phone. "Your plan is always perfect, bro. The company will be yours soon. Make sure to start the paperwork for the transfer of ownership." I almost let out a noise and covered my mouth. "Bro, Harrison only has one brother, Vincent. Could it be that Vincent had betrayed me too? Perhaps my meeting with Harrison had been arranged from the start." As suspicion turned to certainty, the anxiety and fear inside me vanished. There was no way I was going to let their plan succeed. Pretending I hadn't heard anything, I headed to the shower. Fortunately, there was face wash in the bathroom, and I used it to wash my face. My reflection in the mirror showed my eyes burning with anger, replacing any fear or anxiety. Afterward, I acted as if nothing had happened and returned to the room. That felt good. "You seem to be in a better mood." "Yes. Sorry. I've been so busy with work. Maybe I was a bit emotionally unstable." I've reflected on it. Feigning a downcast look, Harrison smiled, seemingly reassured. By acting as if everything was fine, I aim to let him lower his guard and find an opportunity. Are you going on the mining experience tomorrow? Yeah, that's the plan. Zara, you just rest in the room. But when I asked about the mining experience, he still wouldn't meet my eyes. Surely the entire mining experience was a lie, and he intended to bury me. I also needed to find some evidence about Vincent. I was silent, and Harrison also had become distant after lying. To break the awkwardness, I said, "Right, I need to check with Vincent about how his work went today. Why don't you take a shower now, Harrison? It's almost time for dinner." "Yeah, I will." Harrison left the room as if relieved. Watching his actions with understanding, I realized how transparent he was. After Harrison left, I quickly reopened his luggage. Since I had seen it, there was no need for him to hide anything anymore. Still disgusted by the inappropriate luggage for a trip, I took out the bottle of sleeping pills. I emptied its contents and replaced them with the vitamins I had. The vitamin C supplements closely resembled the sleeping pills in color and shape. He probably wouldn't notice the switch. I placed the sleeping pills into my vitamin container. This way, even if he tried to drug me with the bottle's contents, I would be safe. Then, pretending to know nothing, I called Vincent. "Vincent, how was your day?" "Oh, it was fine. Finished my tasks without any trouble and was about to leave work." "You're worried about work, aren't you? Are you enjoying the trip with Harrison?" "Not at all. We're having so much fun. I don't even have time to think about work, though we've had our troubles." When I laughed, he laughed too. Even though Vincent knew what happened. "What happened?" he asked. "I'll tell you when I see you at work." I replied back, "I will see you at work tomorrow, right? Take care." "Yes. I'll contact you if anything comes up. I'm looking forward to hearing your stories." After a brief conversation with Vincent, I hung up the phone. Then, immediately, I called someone else. It was the after-hours number for the office. Employees should still be around at this time. My guess was right. A clerical worker answered, and I asked innocently, "Is Mr. Moore there?" "Mr. Moore? I'm sorry, Mr. Moore has already left for the day." "What about tomorrow?" "Tomorrow. Oh, he won't be returning tomorrow because he's on a business trip. Something's off." Vincent, who just said he was at the office. And I hadn't heard anything about Vincent's business trip tomorrow, nor did he mention it in our previous call. Surely, Vincent is trying to ensure, with utmost care, that I don't catch on to him being in the office. Now that I've seen Harrison's luggage, if I notice anything, he'll insist he was at the office and has nothing to do with Harrison's plans. All right. Thank you. I then hung up the phone. If he's making it seem like he's at the office, maybe he plans to meet up with Harrison. That's what I somehow thought. After coming back from the shower, Harrison was in a great mood. I pretended to be cheerful too. Then it was time for dinner. Since we ordered room service, our meal was brought to our room. Seeing it, "Wow, this looks delicious," I exclaimed. "Let's eat. Go wash your hands first." Harrison kept me away from the meal. He must be planning to mix in sleeping pills. I left the room and headed to the restroom. Leaving the water running and peeping back into the room, sure enough, Harrison took out a bottle of sleeping pills, crushed the supplements inside, and mixed them into my drink. I captured this scene with a silent camera. Turning off the faucet, I sat down as if I just returned, and we toasted. Harrison watched me drink. Afterwards, while enjoying a delicious meal, I repeatedly pretended to be drowsily. You must be tired from traveling. After we're done eating, let's go to sleep early. You're right. The meal was delicious. To think someone would mix drugs into such wonderful food. What kind of person does that? If you're that sleepy, go to the bathroom first, Harrison said to me, staggering. I followed his suggestion and stood up to go to the restroom. Pretending to do so, I peeked back into the room. Once again, Harrison took supplements from the bottle of sleeping pills, and this time mixed them into my soup. Even if it's just supplements, the amount would surely make one sleep deeply, which must be his intention. After returning from the restroom, I drank the soup with supplements, not leaving a drop. Where's your usual supplement? Harrison asked me, on the verge of falling asleep. Because I rarely forget to take my supplements. However, today I couldn't take them. I'm good for today. So sleepy. Harrison, you can take them if you want. You're tired, right? I deliberately said that to Harrison. Occasionally, Harrison would take my supplements. I didn't think it would go so smoothly, but with those words, Harrison took my supplement. Of course, it was the real sleeping pills I had switched earlier. Afterwards, a staff member from the inn came to collect the dishes. Harrison and I watched as they cleared up, thanked them, and then I dove straight into bed. Hey, you're really going to sleep? I suddenly feel so sleepy, I said quietly and closed my mouth. Then I started to breathe quietly. This stuff really works. Harrison, believing he had made me take the sleeping pills, muttered to himself. After a while, I heard Harrison's voice from next door. Bro, are you on your way here? It seems the person on the phone is Vincent, and it sounds like he's coming this way. I secretly recorded their conversation with my phone I had in hand. Zara's asleep. Gave her double the dose of sleeping pills, so she's out cold. Maybe we should drown her like we did with Dad? I couldn't believe my ears when I heard those words. Could it be that they had also done something to his own father? I got it. I'm sleepy too, so I'll take a little nap until you arrive. My heart was racing, and there was no way I could sleep. Just to confirm, the company will be yours, and all of Zara's insurance money will be mine, right? Well, it'll take some time since it's a disappearance, but that can't be helped. Harrison confirmed this with Vincent, as if making sure. It seems they were indeed conspiring to get rid of me. By making it look like I disappeared, Vincent could manage the company without suspicion, and Harrison could boldly play the part of the husband waiting for my return, eventually getting everything. A well-thought-out plan by the smart Vincent. I had been saved by his smarts many times, but if it weren't for that woman I met at the travel center, I surely would have fallen prey to their plan. After the call ended, Harrison, who had taken the sleeping pills, began snoring loudly and fell asleep. Confirming this, I got up. Though not sad, tears fell as I looked at his sleeping face. Then, hastily packing my things, I fled from Harrison again. This time, I had undeniable proof. With it, I ran to the police station once more. Unlike during the day, the police believed everything I said this time, as I had come back with evidence. Photos of the moment sleeping pills were mixed into the meal, and the recent phone call recording. Presented with irrefutable evidence, police cars rushed to the hotel. Entering the room with the police, there were Vincent and Harrison, still deep in sleep, even as he was being woken up. Vincent, surprised by my appearance with the police, turned pale. "Boss, why are you here? And with the police?" He must have been in a panic, realizing I was missing upon his arrival. The bed was a mess, and every possible opening, closets and windows, were all open. "I know everything about your plan, and about Father too." Vincent hung his head at my words. "I never thought I'd be betrayed like this. It's disappointing." Vincent couldn't say anything in response to my words. Even the smart him couldn't think of any excuses this time. "We would like to hear the details at the police station," the police said, and took Vincent outside. Harrison, woken up by the police, looked vacant and couldn't comprehend anything as he was taken away. With both of them arrested, I breathed a sigh of relief. Surely they would face strict interrogation and punishment for both my case and their father's. I hoped this would at least clear some of the resentment. As expected, both received prison sentences. I divorced Harrison. Despite Harrison saying he wouldn't divorce, I was able to do so without issue through the court. It was the obvious outcome. Vincent was fired from the company. Harrison was also fired from his position, charged with attempting to embezzle the insurance money. It became a major incident, broadcasted on the news daily. While it was a tough time for both the company and myself, when things cooled down, I suddenly became curious about the woman at the travel center who had advised me to flee from Harrison. Without her, I would have unsuspectingly become their victim. I wanted to thank her, and that day came sooner than I thought. "Boss, you have a visitor." The person who visited was the woman who had helped me that day. "I'm glad to see you're safe. Thank you so much for everything. No amount of thanks can express my gratitude." I bowed deeply. But then she surprised me with her words. "I should be the one thanking you. For catching those who sent my father to heaven, thank you." "Father? My name is Fiona. I'm Vincent and Harrison's sister. I overheard their plan at the funeral and wanted to save you at all costs. And I didn't want my brothers to commit any more crimes." I was speechless. The woman who had helped me was their sister. I hadn't even known they had a sister. I had never heard them talk about her. I was taken in by my mother, so when I met my brothers at the funeral, it had been a really long time. But both of them, they had lost any semblance of the kind brothers they used to be. Learning about what happened to our father was truly shocking. I wanted them to pay for their crimes, but I couldn't say it. "It's all thanks to you, Zara." When I saw them at the travel spot, I just knew that today was the day. I remembered the serious look in her eyes at that time. There wasn't a trace of doubt, just a serious gaze that made me trust her. Perhaps ironically, it reminded me of Vincent, whom I had trusted. I smiled with genuine relief. Surely they will atone for their sins. I probably will never forgive them in my lifetime, nor will I ever trust them again. But being able to say that, I think, was also wishing for Fiona's hope to be fulfilled. Afterwards, returning to my single life, I threw myself into my work as before. With all that had happened, my parents stopped nagging me about getting married. I hadn't decided to stay single for life, but I had come to think that I had had enough of marriage. However, 3 years later, I met someone. His name was Ian and was the president of a new client company who also had a divorce history, and we hit it off over our shared experiences in divorce and business management. Most importantly, he didn't see me just as a president or for my money. We became great drinking buddies, and eventually we started dating, planning to marry in the spring. "You've had quite the experience. Surely, there won't be any more misfortune greater than that. Your life from now on will be filled with nothing but happiness. Ian told me so. I can't erase the past, but with Ian, I feel like I can turn those memories into just past events and live a future filled only with happiness.
I had twins. Looking forward to your $10,000 gift for the baby shower. My sister, Sarah said with a triumphant voice. So, I responded loudly to her like this. Okay. I'll go with my husband, the real estate king worth $500 billion. What did you say? I could hear her surprised voice over the phone. She must have heard from our parents that my spouse was some shabby, ordinary man. $500 billion? What do you mean? Just what I said. She seemed confused by my words. I couldn't help but laugh. Then Sarah, catching on, retorted. That can't be. Because. Let's talk about it when we meet in person. Including that thing you did back then. Wait a minute. Anne. I'll be there tomorrow then. I said so and hung up the phone unilaterally. She tried to call me back many times, but I ignored all her calls. I'm looking forward to tomorrow. Imagining her regretful face, I laughed out loud. My name is Anne. I'm a 38-year-old housewife. Living with my husband, Joe, it's just the two of us. A housekeeper does all our housework, so I live a leisurely life every day. But actually, Joe is my second husband. I divorced my first husband 6 years ago. I met him later when I was working in a restaurant and remarried. I married my first husband, Kevin, because my parents recommended it. My dad liked Kevin, who was the president of a company that did business with my parents' company, and that's how it started. I had no say in the matter, and the marriage was decided the day after I met him. As the eldest daughter, I was always told to take over the family business, so it didn't strike me as odd. Therefore, our marriage was far from sweet. Kevin, a CEO with an annual revenue of $5 billion, hardly came home and was always out having fun. Even on the rare occasions he did come home, he would just make a disgusted face at me and go to his bedroom. When I started to hate this life, I was suddenly called back to my parents' house. And get a divorce. What? Why all of a sudden? I was confused by my mother's sudden words. Kevin's company was thriving. There was no benefit to divorcing now. Hoping that my situation had moved them, I was next confronted with a shocking scene. Why are Kevin and Sarah? Sarah is my sister. My parents adored Sarah, who was 10 years younger than me, as if they barely saw me. And there she was, walking into the room arm in arm with Kevin. Anne. I've taken a liking to Kevin. So give him to me. Give him to you? Kevin is not a toy. But Kevin likes me better. Right? Sarah said, leaning into Kevin. Then Kevin looked at me with a sleazy smile. The moment I saw those eyes, I had a bad feeling. Younger women are better than middle-aged ones, and Sarah is prettier. I think she's better suited to be a CEO's wife. How could you? Mom. Being discarded for being older and not as pretty as Sarah, I sought help from my mother. I was raised strictly as the eldest daughter, but I believed my mother loved me. That's what I thought. That's why I told you to get a divorce. If Sarah wants him, you must give him to her. You're the older sister, aren't you? How could? I was speechless. I knew my mother had a soft spot for Sarah, but I thought she would be on my side at a time like this. Then my father spoke quietly. Just get the divorce already. Starting today, Sarah will be the successor of this house. Having a divorce in your history is shameful. once divorced, get out of here immediately. Dad! With tears in my eyes, I wrote the divorce papers. Then, as my parents told me, I packed up my belongings and was quickly kicked out of the house. And you'll be in trouble now, won't you? Here's something in place of compensation. Sarah is so kind. Be thankful to her. They mockingly threw a bundle of money at me. Holding that bundle of cash, I was at a loss for what to do next. What should I do now? Being a full-time housewife, I had no means to earn a living. After all, I had been trained for marriage, never even had a part-time job. For now, I decided to go to a hotel and think about what to do next. I moved to the neighboring town and went to a real estate agent. Because I had some savings originally, I could easily rent a place for one person, so I absolutely didn't want to use the compensation money thrown at me. With the thought of someday getting my revenge, I started taking action. After renting a one-bedroom apartment and catching my breath, the next step was to find a job. However, finding a job proved difficult. Then, a call from Sarah came through on my smartphone. Anne? Didn't you know this whole area is Kevin's territory? You won't get hired anywhere you apply. How could this be? I was at a loss. Ultimately, just as Sarah said, I couldn't find a job. Without the ability to work, my savings would eventually run out. I decided to live in a town far away. The place I moved to was a peaceful town with the scent of the sea breeze. It was a nice place. I got a job at a local restaurant and started working there, including lodging. Hey, give me some liquor. Right away. I want some chicken over here. Understood. While I was new to serving food, the customers were all kind to me. Anne's smile makes me feel like I can keep going tomorrow. Aren't you going to marry again, Anne? Marriage again. What a waste. Being still young, many suggested I remarry, and each time I would avoid the topic. I didn't want to end up with someone like Kevin if I remarried. And could I get a beer? Hi Joe, you've worked hard today. Sure. While everyone suggested I remarry, regular customer Joe never did. I found our conversations very comfortable, and eventually, I looked forward to his visits. It was after 3 years in this town that Joe asked me out on a date. How about going to see the sea? Eh? Since it's right in front of us. Seeing Joe, usually so calm, fumbling for words made me laugh. I didn't dislike the idea. I accepted his invitation. Our first date was just a walk on the beach in front of the restaurant, which was quite uneventful, but we talked about various things. Joe told me about losing his parents early and living alone in this town he loved. I shared about my family and Kevin. Then, Joe cried on my behalf. Maybe I should have cried like this. Watching tears flow from his eyes, I thought so. After that, we went out many times together and eventually started dating. Honestly, I can't remember who said I love you first. But our relationship began very naturally. And about a year later, Joe proposed. I can't imagine a life without you, Anne. Is that a proposal? That's the idea. I laughed at Joe's lack of confidence and accepted his proposal. Then we got married. I had no intention of informing my parents or Sarah, but Joe suggested we at least let my parents know, so I contacted them for the first time in 4 years and decided to return to my childhood home. Oh, you're still alive. Remarriage? Go ahead, but we won't provide any support. If you're going to remarry such a poor-looking man, don't ever come back to this house again. My face turned red with anger as they said this in front of Joe. Indeed, Joe isn't into luxury. Even so, he was wearing a high-brand suit today. Despite that, I no longer wanted any relationship with such parents. I was about to speak out in anger when. Then, I will marry Anne. We won't contact you in the future, nor will we ask for any support. Joe. My parents were surprised by Joe's straightforward attitude, but soon started to express their indignation. Joe, with a smile, brushed off my parents and took my hand, leading me out of the house. I didn't expect them to be that harsh. I'm sorry for making you feel uncomfortable. It's okay, don't worry about it. I feel a bit relieved now, I said, smiling at him. Joe relaxed, seeing my expression. And then, we returned to our new home. After a while, the number of calls from unknown numbers increased. I ignored all these calls and consulted with Joe. Let's ignore it. But it's creepy, so let's change it tomorrow. Thank you, that sounds good. I was very grateful to Joe for his prompt response. The next morning, Joe quickly made time for us to go change our phone number. Then, the calls from unknown numbers stopped. I felt relieved. However, after a while, calls from unknown numbers started coming in again. Hello. Even when I answered, the caller would hang up without saying anything. It made me feel very uncomfortable, so I consulted with Joe again. Then Joe said, "Just ignore all calls from unknown numbers." And I followed his advice, ignoring all the calls. Eventually, the calls stopped, and I soon forgot about them. Then one day, I received a call from my childhood home. I had forgotten to delete it from my phone book after cutting ties, so I answered the call. But it wasn't my mother on the other end, it was Sarah. Hello? Anne? Are you doing well? Sarah. Don't sound so scared. It's not unreasonable for my voice to betray my feelings, considering she's the last person I want to talk to. For the time being, I decided to confirm the first question that came to mind. How do you know my number? I found out easily. You know, I have money. Her way of speaking confirmed to me that she hadn't changed at all. I thought about hanging up quickly. But before I could, Sarah started talking cheerfully. I had twins. I'm looking forward to your $10,000 gift for the baby shower, she said with a triumphant voice. I answered her loudly. Okay. I'll go with my husband, the real estate king worth $500 billion. What? I could hear her surprised voice over the phone. She must have heard from our parents that my partner was some shabby, ordinary man. $500 billion? What do you mean? Just what I said. Sarah seemed confused by my words. I couldn't help but laugh. Then she retorted. That can't be. Because. Let's talk about it when we meet in person. Including that thing you did back then. Wait a minute. Anne. I'll be there tomorrow then. I said so and hung up the phone unilaterally. She tried to call back many times, but I ignored all her calls. I'm looking forward to tomorrow. I waited for Joe to come home and explained the situation to him. Then he suggested with a laugh. I'll go in my usual outfit. I nodded in agreement. And I decided to wear my usual clothes and return to my childhood home as well. I'm home. You're back. And did you bring your husband? Eh? Sarah rushed out to greet us with a smile but was surprised by our attire. That's not surprising since the clothes we wore were bought from a no-brand, common store. Both the t-shirts and pants were around $20 each. What's with those shabby clothes? Aren't you a real estate king? I responded with a smile to Sarah's words. Then Sarah made her own interpretations and looked at me with a mocking expression. So, it was a lie after all. You can't hide it with pretense. It's not a lie, I said, pointing to the screen of my smartphone. There, Joe's name and photo were displayed. After looking at it closely, Sarah exclaimed, "Wait, that major real estate group? The president of that? No way!" "It's not a lie." Sarah glared at me with frustration. Then she pointed at our clothes and started to insult us. "Then why are you wearing such shabby clothes?" I gave Sarah a patronizing look in response. "We have to match the economic situation of the family home, don't we?" "Are you saying our house has fallen?" "No, I judged that this level of attire was appropriate." Joe and I usually dress formally when we go to someone's home. We have never been disrespectful enough to wear t-shirts and jeans. That's why we deliberately chose this attire this time. There are 2 reasons for this. First, as earlier, to make Sarah misunderstand and ruin her plan. Seeing her frustrated expression means this was a success. And second, I started walking towards the living room. Joe followed behind me, and Sarah chased after us. Surely, there's no one as reassuring to have by my side as Joe. I forcefully opened the living room door. "Be quiet." "Open it more quietly, like Sarah." "What's with that cheap look?" "I'm really disappointed in you." As soon as the door opened and my parents said that, I couldn't help but laugh. They looked at me, still laughing, as if I were something suspicious. "Sarah mentioned that and supposedly married a rich man, but it seems it was just in showing off." "Right. With such an outfit, it's clear." "We don't want you wearing such cheap clothes in our house," I retorted while still laughing at my parents' arbitrary remarks. "Maybe the business is failing because you judge people by their clothes?" "What did you say?" My parents were shocked by my comment. But Sarah was just standing there, dumbfounded. I decided to enlighten her gently. "I heard it was a deficit last year." "How is it going this term, still uncertain?" "It's none of your business." Actually, I'd like to say it's none of my business, but unfortunately, our family ties haven't been legally severed. My father glared at me with a look of frustration. That expression reminded me, Sarah takes after our father, and I realized I take after our mother. In fact, since Kevin married Sarah, my father's company has been on a downward spiral. After receiving Sarah's call, I had Joe confirm it, and far from recovering, their performance has been worsening. The second reason we wore low-priced clothes was this. We wanted to let our nearly bankrupt parents underestimate us first, so when they were told about the bankruptcy, the impact would be greater. I continued talking while sighing at my glaring parents. "I intend to renounce any inheritance when the time comes." "You were planning on inheriting the estate?" "All of Mom and Dad's money is mine." Sarah, who had been silent until now, cut in. It seems she didn't understand what I was saying. I could explain it nicely, but honestly, it's tiresome. However, without explaining, the conversation wouldn't move forward. Just when I thought that, Joe succinctly explained in my place. "Your parents' company is about to go bankrupt." "Eh?" Sarah looked at our parents with a shocked face. And they awkwardly turned away. Then, unbelievably, Sarah wrapped her arms around Joe. "Then, Joe, could you cover for them? In return, you can do whatever you like with me." Just kidding. Despite Sarah's light-hearted words, a tension filled the air between me and Joe. Joe sighed deeply, forcefully removed Sarah's arms, and spoke up. "Can you not do that? It's disgusting." "Disgusting? Me?" "Yes, you're disgusting," Joe emphasized, as if to make sure his point got across. Shocked by the blunt rejection, Sarah stepped back and glared at me, teary-eyed. "How dare you say something so rude?" I'm prettier than that plane and over there. That's impossible. She is slimmer, her skin is clearer, and not just her features, but her heart is much purer. He said, listing my good qualities one after another. Being good at cooking, intellectual, considerate, and more honest than anyone else. Hearing this, it's as if he's describing a perfect being, which is somewhat embarrassing. I tugged lightly on Joe's sleeve twice to stop him. Then Joe turned to me and smiled. This modesty is also a charm that your sister lacks. What are you talking about? Sarah retorted angrily. Since the last time I saw her, her body had significantly enlarged. She must have gained at least 44 pounds. Her face, once praised for its beauty, was now covered in acne and blemishes, far from pretty. Presumably, pampered by our parents and affected by age, her metabolism slowed down, leading to weight gain. Typical her, I sighed internally. Yet, our parents defended her. Sarah just gained a little weight after giving birth. She'll return to her former self soon. No, this is clearly due to an unhealthy lifestyle. Stay out of it! My mother, face red with anger, yelled at me. The mother I couldn't oppose while living at home now didn't scare me at all after 6 years. To such a mother, I revealed another truth. By the way, there's a chance that the sons Sarah gave birth to aren't Kevin's, right? What? Is that true, Sarah? As I spoke, Kevin's voice came from behind. Turning around, I saw Kevin holding 2 babies. Long time no see, Kevin. What does this mean? He approached me aggressively. Joe stepped in front of me and began to explain on my behalf. I heard about Kevin from Anne. We had someone look into it before coming here. I didn't expect to find evidence in just half a day, though. Joe said, pulling out his smartphone. It showed a photo of a man and a woman holding hands, entering a hotel. Upon seeing it, Kevin exclaimed, Sarah! You're still in touch with him? Then, without being asked, Kevin began to spill details. Right after we got married, Sarah cheated on me with that man in the photo. She said it was just once, so I forgave her, Kevin said, glaring at her. Then Sarah glared back at him and retorted, You forgave me, but you, becoming a subsidiary of our family company, are too arrogant, Kevin. It was all Sarah's insistence. Sarah and Kevin were uglily blaming each other, their argument escalating. It seems Kevin's company became a subsidiary of Sarah's father's company soon after their marriage, leading to a rapid decline in its performance. I wish I hadn't divorced Anne. Kevin, what are you saying? There's no way you'd prefer Anne over me. Sarah screamed hysterically, to which Kevin raised his voice as well. I guess so. Anne didn't cheat on me, and I was free to do as I pleased. If there were kids with Anne, she would take care of them, so I wouldn't have to. Kevin realized something mid-sentence, his expression changing. I had a bad feeling about it. That's it. And let's remarry. It must have been our destiny. Kevin, lost in his delusions, kneeled before me. I recoiled from the sheer creepiness. Joe stepped between me and Kevin. And is my wife. There's no chance she'll remarry you. Who are you? Get out of the way! Kevin shouted at Joe with irritation. From behind Joe, I made my stance clear to Kevin. I could never remarry you. I wouldn't want your children. Oh, you couldn't have them anyway. But still, no. What do you mean I couldn't have them? Kevin looked dumbfounded. As did our parents and Sarah. I decided to explain to them. When I was still married to Kevin, we went to a gynecologist. remember? I had tests done. Right, you dragged me to the gynecologist once. But it was your fault, wasn't it? Kevin kept insisting his health was fine, clearly wanting to believe I was the problem. I confronted Kevin with the truth after 6 years. The one who can't have children is you, Kevin. Lies, lies. Then whose are these kids? Unfortunately, they're not yours. Kevin slumped upon hearing this. The housekeeper hurried to take the babies from Kevin's hands, with a stunned Sarah in the background. So, Sarah, it seems they aren't Kevin's children. Sarah, why didn't you tell me about such a defect? If you had told me properly, by now. Sarah started to shift the blame masterfully. I listened dispassionately until she ran out of steam, then laughed and said, "Isn't it your own fault?" What did you say? Then give me Joe. He already said no. Then give me money. Families should help each other out. You say that. Her words irritated me. There was never any familial support for me. In times of hardship, instead of solidarity, I was met with cold indifference. Unfortunately, I'm not part of your family. I am, right? Anne, don't be so grumpy. Sarah's words were irritating, but taking them seriously was pointless. I took a deep breath. Before I could retort, my mother spoke up. And I'm sorry for everything. But we're really struggling. If you really have money, could you help us? That's right. As Sarah said, families help each other. Can't you forgive what happened before? What on earth are these people saying? Their words left me utterly baffled. There was no point in hoping for their remorse. I discarded the slight affection I had left for this family and looked at them coldly. Noticing my gaze, they momentarily trembled but soon plastered on insincere smiles. We apologize for everything. Yes, yes. We've said this much, so you should compromise a bit. Their unrepentant attitude made me sigh. Then, with a smile just around my lips, I asked my mother, "Why do I have to do so much for a half-sister and biological parents who bullied me?" A half-sister? What are you talking about? Sarah is my child. Even with such a clueless response from my father, it seemed my mother understood what that implied. Her face turned pale. What are you talking about, Anne? It's fine if you want to play dumb. I once saw Mom cheating. In fact, when I was still living at home, I caught my mother bringing a man into the house. It happened shortly after we got married. Kevin and I were away on business, and Sarah was on a trip with her friends. It was just my mother and me at home. When I returned from an errand my mother had asked me to run, I found unfamiliar men's shoes. At first, I thought we had a visitor and went to the living room, but no one was there. Curious, I then heard voices from the bedroom. I wanted to block my ears. But the next words I heard shocked me. My husband doesn't know that Sarah is your child. Sarah isn't our dad's child. I covered my mouth with both hands to prevent myself from screaming out loud. I wanted to hear more, but sensing they were about to leave the bedroom, I hurried out to kill time and returned home when I thought the coast was clear. Curious about that incident, I investigated right after marrying Joe. The man turned out to be Mike, a longtime friend of my father. And the affair was still ongoing. So, because you've been cheating on the family with him, you threw me out when Sarah wanted Kevin. What do you mean? My mother, turning pale, shook her head in denial. Seeing her reaction, even my father seemed to grasp the meaning, his face reddening with anger towards my mother. I decided to give my father the name of my mother's affair partner. Mom's affair partner is Mike. Mike? You mean she had an affair with him? Yes, even now. My words left my father dumbstruck. Mike was considered a close family friend, so the betrayal must have hit him hard. Despite the situation, I felt no sympathy for my father. What? I'm not Dad's child. Sarah stood there, dumbfounded, with no one to retort. Are we done here? I've already decided to renounce any inheritance, so do as you please from now on. But in return, I won't help you. Please leave me out of any future matters. My voice shook a bit towards the end, but I managed to say everything I wanted. All right, let's go. I signaled Joe with my eyes, feeling refreshed. Just before leaving the room, I turned back and pulled an envelope from my bag. Oh, right. This is the compensation money you threw at me. I haven't used it, so it's still the full amount. Consider this a return for your baby shower gift. It's a bit more than you asked for, I said, placing the envelope in front of Sarah. Sarah, shocked, didn't move. We left the four of them behind and exited my childhood home. Afterwards, my parents didn't divorce, but their relationship turned cold. My mother's actions were severely restricted, and her affair with Mike was forcibly ended. My father stepped down from his position as president, tried living on his pension but failed due to his long-standing spending habits, and eventually had to sell the house. Passing by my old home recently, I saw it had been demolished, which somehow made me feel a bit relieved. Apparently, they now live in a rental apartment, struggling to keep up with the rent with both parents having to work. My mother, having never worked before, hasn't managed to keep a job and moves from one to another. My sister and her husband divorced. Naturally, Sarah took custody of the child. Sarah, having never worked and now with 2 children, struggled to live and ended up pushing herself onto her affair partner. But he was already married, and she's now in a difficult situation. While I could sympathize with them being half-related, remembering all they did makes me think it's their own fault. After his divorce, Kevin attempted to revive his company alone but was already tarnished by a bad reputation, leading to an exodus of business partners. Moreover, leaving the umbrella organization caused his stocks to crash, and it seems his business couldn't sustain itself. Eventually, his company went bankrupt. Also, amidst having no money, he got scammed in a marriage fraud on a dating app, losing the compensation money Sarah had paid him, and ended up broke. Furthermore, he's taken out loans from dubious sources and is now working hard in construction to repay his debts every day. He even called Joe asking for money but was firmly rejected since they're strangers to each other. He was demanding a divorce from me until the end, so there's no room for sympathy. As for me, I'm actually expecting our first child. Joe was overjoyed upon hearing the news and has already started designing a home prioritizing our child. He's even prematurely selecting babysitters, which makes me laugh at his excitement. It's going to be a boy. Neither Joe nor I have relatives anymore. But the people in our town are very kind, already offering various kinds of help. Being born to a town full of such supportive people, this child is truly fortunate. Joe and I talk about this every night. How are you feeling, Anne? I feel quite well today. That's great. I hope a healthy baby is born. Thank you. Everyone greets me like this when I go for a walk, which makes me very happy. And I'm truly glad to have moved to this town. And I couldn't decide between blue and green for the blanket, so I ended up buying both. It's still too early for that. While I scold Joe for buying something nearly every day, I'm knitting socks for the baby. I plan to finish them a week before the due date. Ah, it kicked. Really? Daddy's here. Joe reacts to my words, putting his ear to my stomach and talking to it. Just at that moment, the baby kicked again. He responded. Seems he likes me. Daddy loves you too. Joe, really? While I'm slightly exasperated, I find such moments endearing. Immersed in this happiness, I start knitting the socks again. My daughter Sharon's husband Christopher suddenly said with a sly smile, "I want to take this opportunity and discuss this with you. I had a DNA test taken because I thought she didn't look like me. And it turns out she's not my daughter." Christopher said so, pointing at my granddaughter Tiana, who was being held by Sharon. I made an eye contact with my husband Dylan while Christopher was unable to hide his smirk. I figured as much. I was disappointed, but anger quickly overtook me. "So you've been cheating on me behind my back? You bastard! Were you having an affair with one of the fathers who picks up their kids from daycare?" His raised voice caught the attention of those around us. I felt truly sorry. I still wanted to believe in him. "A woman like this is totally untrustworthy. Divorce. I want a divorce." Sharon seemed unable to comprehend Christopher's sudden change. Tiana, sensing something was wrong, started crying, and her cries echoing around us. I couldn't believe he was this kind of person. I felt an anger towards him like I had never felt before for neglecting my daughter. Looking over at Dylan, I saw him with an angry expression, fists clenched. This was our only chance. I exchanged glances with Dylan, then took out a photo we had prepared in advance. This photo was our trump card. With hands trembling with anger, I held up the photo in front of Christopher. "My name is Violet. I'm a 55-year-old housewife. I live a commonplace life, but I cherish the certain happiness I feel and value the peaceful family life I have. My family consists of my husband Dylan, who currently works at a travel agency, my daughter Sharon, a nursery teacher, and my granddaughter Tiana. We are a family of 4. Until recently, Christopher, Sharon's husband, who's also an assistant director who works at a TV station, lived with us. When he was still in this house, I never dreamed we would end up living separately. Our current life goes back to when I met Dylan. Meeting Dylan was a story from decades ago. Back then, it was common for our marriages to be arranged by our parents. He was 5 years older, in the prime of his career at a travel agency. He had a manly and serious look about him, which left a good impression on me. Due to his job, he was knowledgeable about geography all over the world. I remember him talking excitedly about the charms of various tourist destinations over dinner. Holding a glass of beer in his hand, he said with enthusiasm, "My favorite place is definitely the pyramids of Egypt. It's what I recommend most to customers. The pyramids, made of limestone, used to shine white, reflecting the sun when they were first built." His carefree smile, like a little boy, stirred something in my heart. Seeing him like that, I wanted to sit next to him and hear more. "I would love for you to take me to your recommended places, Dylan." To that he responded with a smile. "Leave it to me." That's how we hit it off, starting a relationship with marriage in mind. Dylan was busy with work, but he always made time for me. His experience in a travel agency showed in how perfectly he planned our dates and trips. I wanted to walk through life with this man. After a few months of dating, I was convinced that we could make a married life work. "Please marry me. I want to see the pyramids with you on our honeymoon." It was an unplanned proposal. He stared at me wide-eyed for a few seconds, then broke into a broad smile. "Of course. Thank you." "Really? I'm sorry I made you say it." Thus, having confirmed our feelings for each other, we officially pledged our love at our wedding a few months later. True to our promise, we went to Egypt to see the pyramids on our honeymoon. That scenery will never fade in my mind, even after many years. In the midst of what could be called the pinnacle of happiness, our daughter Sharon was born. Life with a child passed surprisingly quickly, and before we knew it, Sharon had grown up and become a respectable nursery teacher. Sharon, who always loved children, seemed fulfilled, even though she was often busy with the kids at the nursery. Through her work, she started talking about wanting to get married and have her own children. She came to me for advice when she was 26. Mom, do you remember Nicola from my university? I talked to her about getting married, and she invited me to a party. I'm not sure if I should go or not. Seeing my daughter seemingly exhausted from thinking about marriage and kids, I decided to give her a push. Well, isn't this a chance? You can trust an invitation from Nicola. Why not just go and see? Sharon looked somewhat anxious, but eventually decided to go. And so the day of the party came. Sharon left the house wearing fancier clothes than usual. Her makeup, different from her normal style, seemed to be done with extra effort. Dylan and I had dinner alone for the first time in a while. As we ate, Dylan seemed restless. What's wrong? Wasn't the dinner good? I asked half-jokingly, and Dylan replied awkwardly. Of course not. I'm just a bit worried about Sharon. I hope she doesn't get deceived by some strange guy. I felt the same way. After all, I was the one who had encouraged Sharon to go. I guess so. But it's Sharon, she'll be fine. She has a good eye for men. After all, she takes after me in that regard. I guess you're right. I think we both were trying to mask our anxiety with laughter. Then, a few hours later, Sharon returned. When I asked how it went, Sharon said with a smile. There was a great guy there. A really great guy. And she kept repeating how he was a good person. Whether it was from the cold air of January or the excitement of finding someone, her cheeks were flushed. What kind of person is he? Dylan asked, and to that Sharon proudly replied. He's part of a TV crew. His name is Christopher. He goes on location shoots and visits all sorts of places. I went on many trips with you too, right? So, we hit it off. Upon hearing this, Dylan frowned slightly. A TV crew, so he's in the entertainment industry, right? I don't have a very good impression of that. How should I put it? Didn't he look a bit frivolous? But you're the one who said, men who travel to different places and see various sceneries are trustworthy. He had black hair and didn't look frivolous at all. Well, I did say that, but... I calmed down Dylan, who didn't seem convinced, and told Sharon. Anyway, make sure you date him properly and take your time to find out what kind of person he is. It's late now. You have work tomorrow, right? I urged Sharon, who seemed quite drunk, to go to bed. After that, Sharon and Christopher officially started dating. Their relationship seemed to be going well, and Sharon introduced Christopher to me and Dylan. Christopher, being in the entertainment industry, initially seemed elusive. But after talking to him, he turned out to be very personable. So when they brought up marriage, I genuinely agreed. The best thing is to respect Sharon's choice. Thus, they continued their relationship smoothly and got married 2 years after meeting. Christopher, wearing an undoubtedly expensive suit, came to greet us formally. He held a bottle of high-end wine in his hand. I was genuinely happy for Sharon's marriage. Sharon's face, brimming with happiness, made it clear she was at the peak of her joy. Thinking back, that might have been the happiest time. Christopher, looking confident, addressed Dylan. I've brought some wine. Let me pour you a glass. Dylan, albeit awkwardly, accepted it. The meal continued in a good atmosphere for a while. It was when the bottom of the wine bottle Christopher brought started to show that the mood changed. You're in the entertainment industry, right? Frankly, I still can't trust you. Dylan's words made me freeze. The room suddenly became quiet, the atmosphere tense. I didn't want to ruin this happy moment. Hey, why are you saying such unpleasant things all of a sudden? I sharply said to Dylan. Sharon then spoke up. That's right. What are you talking about, Dad? That's just prejudice. It's terrible that you can't trust the person I chose. Dylan's frown did not ease even at Sharon's words. Christopher tried to maintain a smile, but he was undoubtedly upset. The evening ended with an awkward atmosphere. After Christopher left, a sober Dylan sincerely apologized to us. Indeed, Dylan's opinion was nothing but a prejudice. Sharon's smile had proved Christopher was a good match, which was evident. Gradually, seeing our daughter's happy smile, Dylan began to accept Christopher. They were supposed to have pledged eternal love at their wedding. They were supposed to be in love. Now, I regret not listening more to Dylan's concerns. As Sharon was approaching her 30s, she announced her pregnancy. Both Dylan and I were overjoyed. Dylan, like when he talks about tourist destinations, awaited the grandchild's birth with a childlike smile. And I too, got too excited for my age. You two are getting ahead of yourselves. Then, at Sharon's request, she and Christopher decided to move in with us. We thought it would be better for everyone to live here together. We were saying you guys would surely be happy living with your grandchild. That's true. You both have jobs, right? Leave the caregiving to Grandma and Grandpa. Don't worry. Their belongings had already been moved from the nearby apartment where they had been living. Everything was prepared for the whole family to live together. Tears welled up as I thought about my daughter's growth and the upcoming birth of my grandchild. As we had these conversations, Sharon's belly grew. Christopher was still busy with work. I understood his job, but I wondered if he couldn't be a bit more supportive of Sharon. As for Sharon, being on maternity leave, she spent most of her time at home. I asked about Christopher's work. Sharon, rubbing her belly, defended him. Christopher is busy. He's always on the go. But he calls every day to say good morning and good night. We're even thinking of names for the baby together. Hoping for a beautiful girl. Oh, we'd love to help pick a name too. Sharon smiled, savoring her happiness, as she listed a few name options. As the due date approached, Sharon decided to name the baby Tiana. The moment Tiana was born, her vibrant cry was indescribably precious. Sharon's relieved expression. Tears in Christopher's eyes. Dylan's beaming smile. And Tiana, trying her best to breathe. I was confident that our lives were solid and would continue to be so. However, the happy future I envisioned never came to be. At the height of my daughter's happiness, I was shocked to learn a disturbing truth from Dylan. He had confirmed some unbelievable behavior from Christopher. I didn't want to doubt him. He was supposed to be the perfect husband for my precious daughter. Despite my uneasy feelings, Dylan, with a serious expression, insisted. I saw it with my own eyes. I know it's hard to believe Christopher's suspicious behavior. Violet, you might not want to know, but it's true. That man is lying. To us and to Sharon. I had never seen Dylan so emotional in over 30 years together. From his unsettled state, I learned everything. Dylan's seriousness made me realize the gravity of the situation. But it was too much to accept all at once. Why would Christopher do such a thing? What about Sharon and Tiana? My heart pounded, wishing I hadn't heard this truth. I wanted it all to be a lie. Especially since Tiana had just been born. Since Dylan told me, a swelling rage grew inside me. I felt the greatest anger of my life. I didn't know what the right answer was, but it was for Sharon and for Tiana. Reluctantly, I decided to follow Dylan's plan. Then we quietly began our preparations, just the two of us. Meanwhile, Tiana continued to grow. A month after her birth, we decided to go out as a family. The attendees were me, Dylan, Sharon, Christopher, and Tiana, 5 in total. I heard Christopher had planned this outing, which was a great surprise. He had arranged everything, including the meal. Dylan and I carefully prepared for the day. Upon arrival, Sharon lovingly watched Tiana. After taking a family photo with Tiana at the center, I wished for these peaceful days to continue. I glanced at Christopher. He wasn't looking at Sharon or Tiana. Although smiling, Christopher's attitude and tone seemed detached, as if preoccupied with something else. Then Christopher suddenly said with a sly smile, I want to take this opportunity and discuss this with you. I had a DNA test taken because I thought she didn't look like me. and it turns out she's not my daughter. Christopher said so, pointing at my granddaughter Tiana, who was being held by Sharon. I made an eye contact with my husband Dylan while Christopher was unable to hide his smirk. Just as I thought. I was disappointed, but quickly anger overwhelmed me. The test results show that Tiana is not my child. His shout drew the attention of those around us. So you've been cheating on me behind my back? You bastard. Were you having an affair with one of the fathers who picks up their kids from daycare? I felt a deep sense of regret. I still wanted to believe in him. A woman like this can't be trusted at all. Divorce. I want a divorce. Sharon seemed unable to comprehend Christopher's sudden change. She just froze and couldn't move. Sensing something amiss, Tiana, held by Sharon, started crying. Tiana's cries echoed throughout the area. After a moment, Sharon, with a look of astonishment, confronted Christopher. What do you mean? Why would you say that all of a sudden I haven't cheated? Christopher answered with a smug look. You say you haven't cheated, but can you provide any concrete evidence right now? I can't provide that, but I really haven't. Ah, so you're making excuses. I have irrefutable evidence here. Saying this, Christopher showed us the DNA test results and a divorce application. The test results indicated that there was no proof of a parent-child relationship between Christopher and Tiana. Half of the divorce application was already filled out. He had prepared all this. Sharon, faced with this evidence, couldn't say anything, her face on the verge of tears. Her lips were tightly pressed, enduring the pain, and my heart ached for her. Who could have imagined she would be treated this way? The results show that she's not my child. A cheating woman made a child with some other man, and the DNA proves it. Sign the divorce papers quickly. If you resist, I'll take you to court and demand compensation. Then Christopher, who had retracted his smile, spoke in a low voice. Hey, I've got a good lawyer. You can't escape, so be prepared. It's incredible how far he could take this act. This was the man he turned out to be. I felt a rage towards him like never before for neglecting my daughter. Glancing at Dylan, I saw he was angry too. Now was the only chance. I exchanged glances with Dylan and then took out a photo we had prepared in advance. This photo was our trump card. Holding it with trembling, angry hands, I presented it in front of Christopher. If you're going to do that, we have something to present as well. Right, Dylan? Yes, indeed. Dylan pulled several photos from his jacket pocket. They were photos of Christopher's infidelity, obtained by hiring a private investigator. Each photo was decisive evidence, but we had prepared multiple. It's necessary to confront him thoroughly with irrefutable evidence. How come these are here? What's this? In each of the several photos, Christopher was clearly visible. There were pictures of him walking arm in arm with an unknown woman, entering a hotel with a woman, and kissing a woman on the street, among others. Since the day Dylan confirmed Christopher's suspicious behavior, we had been investigating his actions with a detective. The skill of a professional detective is astounding. So, you were regularly meeting another woman, planning to switch from Sharon to her? Who's the one cheating, I wonder? Dylan also started yelling as well. You bastard! Trampling on Sharon's feelings. Christopher's smile had vanished, replaced by an unmistakable panic. How did you find out? No, wait. This is fake. You made these composite photos to slander me, you liar. Sharon's the one cheating. His voice was low at first, as if reassuring himself, then became accusatory, threatening us. But my anger was beyond control. Dylan, as if echoing my fury, shouted. You're the one who is lying. Are you saying all these photos are fake? Perhaps feeling overwhelmed by Dylan, or realizing his excuses were futile, Christopher suddenly became quiet. Dylan, although sometimes seen as unapproachable, hardly ever raises his voice. I realized for the first time how intimidating he could be when he was truly angry. Dylan took a breath and began talking in a quiet manner. My discomfort wasn't mistaken. You might not have noticed, but I heard everything from the bathroom. Those overly suspicious conversations. Things like "I'll manage the separation smoothly" or "help me forge the DNA report." I didn't intend to listen, but such conversations are obviously strange. You've been deceiving and hurting our daughters all this time. Dylan had accidentally overheard Christopher's phone conversation while he was in the bathroom. Dylan had been close to the door without realizing Christopher was there. And then Dylan raised his voice again. "We're going to do another DNA test. Science will prove it. The second test should yield the same results, right? You'll take responsibility for what you've said. Don't even think about running away." Christopher's legs wobbled, his nose running, reduced to a pitiable state. Tiana, tired from crying, had fallen asleep. Was he always such a pathetic man? I remembered his sharp, robust appearance when he first came to ask for our daughter's hand in marriage. That man was nowhere to be seen now. At that moment, something snapped inside me. Sharon must have felt the same. Her eyes brimming with tears, she looked at Christopher with a mix of disgust and pity. I rubbed Sharon's back. "I wanted to believe in you, if only I could." I sighed heavily, but now that the truth was revealed, Christopher could only apologize. His pride gone, his apologies seemed too late. Then, as Christopher was profusely apologizing, Sharon approached him. With tears in her eyes, she lashed out at him angrily. "Don't joke around. It's too late to apologize now. Get out of our sight. You're the worst." Christopher's apology was cut off by the sound of a sharp slap. It felt like a satisfying sound that dispelled the terrible atmosphere. After receiving a powerful slap from Sharon, Christopher collapsed to his knees. He tried to flee but seemed unable to move, his legs giving out. "As you wish, we'll part ways. Goodbye forever." Christopher received the stares of everyone around. Urged by Sharon, Dylan and I left the scene. Sharon didn't look back, not even once. According to the detective's investigation, Christopher's affair partner was an ex-girlfriend. The reason they broke up was apparently because he was a part-timer with low income at the time. Back then, Christopher was juggling part-time night shifts at a grocery store and stocking shelves at a supermarket. Later, Christopher joined a TV crew, and during a street interview for a TV program, he happened to meet his ex-girlfriend again. It was a wide show hosted by a celebrity known for his sharp tongue. His ex-girlfriend seemed impressed with Christopher, who had made a place for himself in the entertainment business. By this time, Sharon was already pregnant. Both wanting to rekindle their relationship, the ex-girlfriend was quite cooperative with this plan. Such a hopeless situation, I thought. Now that I knew the whole truth, my anger was replaced more with disappointment. On the way home, none of us spoke a word. If even we, as parents, were deeply hurt, Sharon's emotional wounds must be immeasurable. In the heavy silence, Dylan broke the ice. "Hey, you should just rest for now. I'll take care of all the tedious things like the compensation claim and other procedures with Violet." Sharon just nodded silently. I also spoke to Sharon. "Your life is still ahead of you. For Tiana's sake, eat delicious food, get plenty of sleep, enjoy beautiful scenery, and just focus on resting. We'll always be here to support you." Sharon was still struggling to come to terms with her feelings. But with Tiana there, we had to move forward. Few months passed by, but Sharon tended to stay at home. Given what had happened, it was understandable. Yet gradually, she regained her smile and declared, "If I keep mourning, Tiana's going to get mad at me. Mom, Dad, I'm sorry for worrying you so much. I'm thinking of returning to work soon." As for the compensation, Christopher and his party ended up paying $15,000 each. It was a deserved retribution. And Christopher was dramatically dumped by his ex-girlfriend. She was furious about the large sum of money lost because of him. "That's a fitting end for such a man. Dylan said with a face that couldn't hide his disgust. About half a year later, in a season of blue skies, Sharon successfully returned to work. Worried, I secretly visited her workplace. My concerns were unnecessary, as I saw Sharon lively and happily working surrounded by children. I told this to Dylan, and to that he proudly snorted. "I told you there was no need to worry." Though he had hesitated to come with me till the last minute. Hearing Dylan's words, I couldn't help but laugh, feeling our happy daily life returning. Despite everything, our family had regained peaceful days. Tiana was growing up healthy. Dylan, now past 60, was still actively working. Today, I'm preparing a meal for a family dinner. After setting the table, I said to everyone, "Let's go on a family trip again. Anywhere, as long as we're together." "Absolutely. Anywhere we go will be fun." At that moment, Tiana made a sound as if replying. Her incomprehensible babble was enough to bring a smile to Sharon's face. We all smiled in response. "Dad and Mom, live long, okay? I want to show Tiana the wide world. Just like the old times, I hope we can travel together again. Of course, I plan to live long. Right, Dylan?" "Yes, indeed. Maybe it's time to cut back on the alcohol." Dylan went to put the beer he had prepared back in the fridge. I too thought about starting walking myself to stay healthy. With these 4 people, I felt like we could do anything. I want to continue spending my days in this house, unchanged. Because I know there is certain happiness here. Wait, are you trying to use the bathroom? Dirty old people are banned from using it. We use that toilet too, you know. If you guys use it, our brand new toilet will get dirty immediately, won't it? Sorry, but you'll have to make do with peeing in the bushes outside. Oh, and don't do it in the garden, okay? If you dirty our precious home even a little, I'll never forgive you." Both we were taken aback by Emily and Wilson's words. A bathroom ban? That's just unthinkable. No matter how much they dislike us, such behavior is inexcusable. We have endured harsh words from our son and his wife before. As we're the kind of people who dislike fights, we've always quietly accepted their treatment. But now, we've reached our limit. We need to make it clear what happens when they make enemies of us. I started plotting a scenario for revenge. I'm sure this plan will work. My name is Sarah, a 62-year-old homemaker. I live with my husband. I met Johnson, my husband, at the company where we used to work. After Johnson's persistent pursuit, we started dating and smoothly transitioned into marriage. I was blessed with a son with Johnson. A lively boy. We named him Wilson and raised him with care. Wilson grew up healthily and eventually found a job. He married a woman named Emily and built a family. I remember the feeling genuinely happy when he first introduced Emily to us. But that happiness didn't last long. Everything went awry when I realized why she had married him. After marriage, they lived with us. One day, Wilson and Johnson were out, and only Emily and I were at home. At first, we were chatting amicably in the living room, but then Emily's mobile phone rang. It seemed she received a call. "Sorry, Sarah, it looks like it's from a friend." With that, she excused herself and went back to her room. Left alone in the living room, I decided to clean the house to pass the time. As I was passing Emily's room, I inadvertently overheard her conversation. Her voice was so loud that I couldn't help but hear. "Seriously, those old folks are living too long. If they suddenly died, we could get the inheritance. I married into the family for the president's fortune, but this is just hell." Her words felt like a cold shower to me. Actually, Johnson's father was the president of well-known top-tier company. However, the company was set to be inherited by his brother. Still, being part of the president's family, Johnson had some share of the wealth. It turned out Emily had married Wilson with that very intention in mind. They probably believed that once we passed away, the inheritance would become theirs. In fact, we had always treated Wilson and his wife with this in mind. Such behavior couldn't be tolerated. I shared this with Johnson that night. Initially, he was shocked, saying, "Really?" but he trusted my words. After discussing, we decided not to act immediately but to observe if Emily would reveal her true intentions. Maybe, in the meantime, she might change her attitude and start treating us like a real family. It was a decision made with the faint hope. But things didn't go as expected. To test Wilson and his wife, we observed their behavior. We invited them out, asked for help with chores, and so on. Gradually, they seemed to find us a nuisance, and their attitude changed. "Wilson, you're free now, right? I'm sorry to ask you, but can you give me a hand to do the laundry? My back hurts." One day, seeing Wilson relaxing in the living room, I asked him. Although Emily had been the one to speak harshly that day, Johnson suspected they might be in this together. We suspect that maybe Wilson feels in the same way. So, I started to approach Wilson to understand his feelings. At my request, Wilson looked up from his mobile phone, sighed with annoyance, and said, "Can't you do that yourself, Mom? You're a mother, after all. Shouldn't you be able to handle the household chores by yourself?" He then returned his gaze to his mobile phone. It became clear that he had no intention of helping. His attitude seemed to say, "I have no intention of being a family with you." This thought sent a chill down my spine. Don't say that. Family should help each other when in trouble. You have your own family now, Wilson. You need to act responsibly. My voice trembled, reflecting my fear. If my suspicions were true, it meant that even Wilson, whom we had lovingly raised, was betraying us. That was something I couldn't bear. Desperately, I pleaded, "Please help me." But Wilson didn't even look up from his phone or show any sign of getting up from the sofa. His unwillingness to help was evident. Persisting in my request, he let out a heavy sigh and continued. "Look," he continued. "Enough is enough. Yes, you're my mother, but that doesn't give you the right to be selfish. I have a wife, Emily, and I need to work for her. I'm already exhausted every day, and now you're asking me to do chores too? That's cruel. Don't ask us to do such things anymore. We are essentially strangers." Essentially strangers. Those words pierced deeply into my heart. It confirmed my fears. Both Wilson and Emily seem to be after Johnson's inheritance. They seem indifferent to us, thinking as long as they receive the inheritance, that's all that matters. This betrayal from family deeply wounded me. Yet, we couldn't foresee something even worse. I immediately told Johnson about Wilson's possible intent for the inheritance. Johnson, seemingly already convinced. "I thought as much." He nodded. And so, our family dynamics became distorted. Amidst all this, Wilson and his wife decided to move out. When they brought it up, we couldn't help but feel relieved. By then, living with them had become unbearable. Even sharing the same house with them was distressing. They wanted to live in a new single-family home, which would require a significant amount of money. To hasten their move, we decided to provide financial assistance. "Dad, Mom, thanks. Family is indeed valuable." Knowing the underlying meaning of Wilson's words, we couldn't genuinely rejoice. The construction of their new house was completed, and it was the day of their move. They packed up some of their belongings and left the house. A week later, we visited their new home with a housewarming gift. Though I didn't want to go, I remembered my father-in-law teaching about maintaining certain courtesies, so I decided to endure it a bit. Nice house, isn't it? Smells like new construction. Their home was more beautiful than expected, probably due to the money spent on it. After being shown around various rooms, when we gave the celebration gift in the living room. "Thank you so much," she said. She seemed pleased as she put away the gift. While chatting in the living room, I felt the need to use the restroom. "Where's the bathroom? May I use it?" I said. To my request, Wilson and his wife responded unbelievably. "Wait, are you trying to use the bathroom? Dirty old people are banned from using it. We use that toilet too, you know." If you use it, our brand new toilet will get dirty immediately, won't it? Followed by his words. Sorry, but you'll have to make do with peeing in the bushes outside. Oh, and don't do it in the garden, okay? If you dirty our precious home even a little, I'll never forgive you. Their words made me feel dizzy. It was too cruel, regardless of how much they disliked us. At that moment, they were like strangers to me. There was no familial affection left. That's why I decided to start my revenge. I planned to ruin them thoroughly. I secretly devised a scenario for it. Exchanging glances with Johnson, who was just as stunned. It seemed Johnson was thinking the same as me. We don't want to be a nuisance, and since we've given the housewarming gift, maybe we should leave if we're not wanted. There was no reason to stay in their house any longer. We had fulfilled our duty by giving a housewarming gift. If they were going to be that terrible to us, we didn't need to stay. Right. Our presence here only seems to bother them. It's better to leave now. I had anticipated being unwelcome, but to be told things like being banned from using the toilet or to go in the bushes was too much. Yeah, leave right now. Don't want this house getting old and musty because of some old people. Don't stay any longer than necessary. Old people making the house musty? That's just absurd. Realizing how much my own son despised us was a bit of a shock. But I couldn't see Wilson as my son anymore. I'd deal with these conflicting feelings later. For now, the priority was to leave. And don't come over unless absolutely necessary. We've got your gift, so you're of no use to us now. Maybe see you at the baby shower, but that's it. Even though she demanded us to leave right away, she still wants a gift. What greedy people. Though giving them gifts was burdensome, we were fortunately not short on money. So, to keep the peace and calm myself, I accepted it. Then let's sever ties. If you despise us so much, it must be hard to continue as a family, right? Anything is fine with me as long as we don't have to deal with you and your family, who are troublesome. Are they high on their own anger? Emily quickly agreed to my suggestion. Likely not understanding the consequences of her decision. We gathered our things and left Wilson's house. They hardly even saw us out. But this was just the beginning of our revenge. I couldn't wait to see them fall into the hell we were about to create. I can't help but look forward to that moment. Back home, I shared the revenge plan with Johnson. He said, "This is going to be interesting." He laughed and was in agreement with my plan. They say spouses become like mirrors of each other, and I really felt that was true. Since then, we had been very busy. To complete our revenge, various preparations were necessary. Before we knew it, about a week had passed. Despite being busy, we were leading a calm life without any major incidents with Wilson and his wife. But it seemed about time for a disruption. As I was expecting this, the phone rang. Johnson and I exchanged glances. Sure enough, it was Wilson on the line. I put the call on speaker so Johnson could hear and spoke to Wilson. "Hello, Wilson? What's up? Did something happen?" It was surprising he called so nonchalantly after what had happened. Normally, after such an incident, I'd think it would be awkward to make a phone call. But Wilson, sounding cornered and desperate, blurted out. "What's happened, you ask? What have you two done? Thanks to you, I'm in a terrible situation. Do something about it now." Wilson's statement was disjointed, and I couldn't understand what he was talking about. Of course, I had orchestrated this revenge, so I could guess what might be happening to him. "What exactly do you mean? Tell me everything from the start, I don't understand." Since I had no idea what he was accusing us of, I couldn't respond. Urging Wilson to explain, he started his story in an angry tone. It seemed the trouble started when he went to work after the incident. While working, Wilson noticed something unusual. The looks directed at him by his colleagues were unusually cold. Wilson, who tends to be overly concerned with others' perceptions, found it unbearable to stay at work and left early that day. Hoping it was just his imagination, he went to work again the next day, but the cold stares remained unchanged. He confronted a colleague about it, but all he got in response was, "Ask yourself." Just that, and they wouldn't tell me anything more. Furthermore, it wasn't just his department colleagues who were giving him cold stares. It seemed as if everyone in the company, from high-ranking superiors to colleagues in other departments, were looking at him with disdain. He felt as if every employee he encountered was regarding him with contempt. Despite racking his brain, Wilson couldn't think of a reason for the cold treatment at work. He hadn't made any mistakes on the job. Eventually, he surmised that my husband, Johnson, a member of the company's founding family, and I must have been involved. "What have you two done? Because of you, I can't work anymore. You need to take responsibility." Wilson lashed out at us one-sidedly. Indeed, the frigid reception he faced wasn't a figment of his imagination, it was a part of our scheme. We had promptly informed my brother-in-law about the ordeal with Wilson and his wife. He values us greatly and was furious upon hearing it. Unfortunately, my brother-in-law isn't one to keep secrets. He inadvertently leaked our story to his secretary and other managerial staff. Soon enough, the entire company knew about their misdeeds, and everyone began to scorn Wilson. "This is too much. Fix it now. I can't work in that kind of environment." Indeed, someone like him, who is easily swayed by others' opinions, couldn't possibly continue working in such a hostile environment. However, his employment was actually a result of nepotism. He had been lazy during his student days, lacking notable educational achievements or qualifications. Since he couldn't find a satisfactory job, his sympathetic uncle hired him at his company. Could someone like Wilson really manage a proper job search? From my perspective, it seemed unlikely. That company was his only option. Yet, working there under current circumstances was impossible for him. "Please, you have to do something. I can't work under those stairs. You caused this, right? Then fix it," he yelled over the phone. But I had no intention of forgiving him. "We've disowned you, remember? Why are you asking for help now?" "That was all Emily's doing. I always considered you and Dad as my family. Families are supposed to help each other, right? So, help me." Indeed, families should help each other. But he had misunderstood the meaning of family. You help because they are your family, not treat them as family only when help is needed. Feeling the conversation was pointless, I ended the call with him. Afterward, my phone kept ringing incessantly, so I blocked his number. That was how we completely severed ties with our own son. Our revenge was far from over. The day after our conversation with Wilson, my phone rang again. This time, it was Emily. "Sarah, please open the entrance. I have something to discuss, including about Wilson. Let me in quickly." As soon as I answered the phone, she blurted out such things. It seemed that she, thinking it best to resolve matters directly, was waiting at the entrance of our house, eager to talk. Well, it was our former house, after all. "Emily, we're not at that house anymore." Indeed, it was our former home. Since then, we had sold the house where we lived with them and moved to a new home. A brand new, sparkling single-family home. Our new home, chosen with a slightly competitive spirit, was more spacious and grander than Wilson and Emily's. "What? Then where are you? Things are terrible here. If we don't know where you are, how can we receive the inheritance? Tell me your current address." She seemingly failed to comprehend the meaning of disownment. To disown means no longer being family, and inheritance is not passed to non-family members. We had even updated our will to ensure that, come what may, Wilson and his wife would not receive any inheritance. However, she appeared to misunderstand, thinking that if some family connection remained, they could still inherit. "Emily, you can no longer receive any inheritance. We've disowned you, remember? We're no longer family. Why would we give an inheritance to someone who's not family?" I was astonished at her lack of understanding. Her ignorance was so profound that it was almost laughable. Surprised by my response, she exclaimed. "What?" She exclaimed in a loud voice. "What?" I didn't know that. That's a real problem if we can't get the inheritance. Let's forget about the disownment, okay? We're still family, right? Her self-centeredness was astounding. It was baffling how someone could be so obsessed with money. Her illogical and selfish statements left me speechless. Misinterpreting my silence as agreement, she continued. How about we live together? You've moved out of this house, right? I just realized how lonely it is without you, Sarah. Our house is big, so you can live here too. Let's live together as a family. And yet, this was the same person who had once called us dirty old people and drove us out. Now she was even suggesting living together, clearly all for the sake of inheritance. It was obvious that restarting life with them was out of the question. I wondered if she even understood that. Could she really not understand even that? Sorry, but we'll have to decline. And from now on, please don't contact us. We've disowned you, so we're no longer family. And non-family members won't inherit anything. Please understand and give up. No! That's unacceptable! Please, Sarah, forgive us! When I firmly declared our disownment, Emily seemed to finally grasp its meaning and desperately clung to any hope. But my decision was final. And likely Johnson's as well. Therefore, I ended the call with her and immediately blocked her number. This way, she couldn't contact us again. They wouldn't know our current whereabouts. Essentially, we've completed our disownment. We felt a sense of relief, having cleanly severed this unpleasant connection. Later, I heard from acquaintances and brother-in-law that Wilson and Emily began fighting incessantly over the inheritance and their jobs, leading to a divorce. They argued bitterly over alimony and property division, even hiring lawyers and taking their disputes to court. After the divorce was finalized, Emily returned to her parents' home. She seemed certain that her biological parents would accept her, but when they actually saw her and learned of the situation, they were furious. Apparently, she was promptly kicked out of the house. Wilson, having quit his job, struggled to find new employment and is now working tirelessly in part-time roles to make ends meet. Meanwhile, Johnson and I are enjoying a peaceful and happy life. The weight of the Wilson affair lifted, we've found newfound freedom. We're planning to go on a trip soon, taking brother-in-law and his wife along. Johnson and I have been making plans for this trip together. It's our way of thanking him for his help in our revenge. We are carefully planning this vacation. Family is about supporting each other and helping in times of need. But that doesn't always mean being related by blood. Some, like Wilson and Emily, disregard even their own family. This incident has deeply ingrained that lesson in us.